Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Nicole Holm, and I am a policy analyst with the All of Us Research program. I'm here to present you with the policies that you agreed to at the beginning of your user journey that are most relevant to working with and presenting your data at an event such as the Researcher Convention. We are here because we really want you to be successful and to be able to comply with our policies, and would like to walk you through some of the policies that have been more challenging for researchers to both address some of the questions we've received and ensure that you understand how to comply with them. And so, as you may know, the mission of the All of Us Research program is built upon several core values and principles around trust, transparency, ethics, and diversity, to ensure trust from participants, both when they provide their data as well as when their data is used by researchers. Preventing misuse of participant data and building trust for participants and communities are some of the values that shape our policies around researcher access and participant data. You have likely interacted with each of these categories in this model throughout your journey as a user, but today we will focus our conversation around the policies in place to ensure accountability with these values. So today we are going to review the policies that users agree with within the Data User Code of Conduct. These policies include the policy on the ethical conduct of research, the policy on stigmatizing research, the data and statistics dissemination policy, as well as the publication and presentation policy. All of these policies detail the ways in which researchers can and cannot use the All of Us resources to ensure responsible use of data, prevent misuse of data at every step in your data user journey. This includes presentation and publication of your research findings, not just the work you do in the Workbench. And as part of this effort, we understand that you review all of these policies at the beginning of your journey on the Workbench, and they may not be at the front of mind when you prepare to publish or present your research. So we have designed a checklist to review the policies and steps required to comply with our policies before you publish, present, or otherwise share any of your research. And this checklist will be made available to you after this presentation. I'm going to go through each of the steps one by one. So the first step in the checklist is to make sure that your data that you are sharing is in compliance with the All of Us data and statistics dissemination policy. If I were to go through this checklist, I would first check to make sure that I have not included any participant and/or incident counts of fewer than 20 in my product in any way. So that includes tables, figures, text. I also would check to make sure that I have not included data from which participant and/or incident counts of fewer than 20 can be derived or calculated using either mathematical formulas or percentages. And if you believe you have a very compelling reason why you should be allowed to display counts of less than 20, you must first receive approval from the All of Us Resource Access Board through an exception request. And you can do that by submitting in the link both within the checklist as well as in the user support hub, the data and statistics dissemination policy exception request form. And you must receive approval of that request before you share any values less than 20. You also will need to check that you have submitted the mandatory All of Us publication and presentation reporting form, sharing the details of your publication or presentation with the program at least 2 weeks before the publication or presentation date. And this form is also linked in the checklist. You also need to make sure that you have included a statement that acknowledges the program and, most importantly, the participants and their contribution to your research. An example of what that statement should look like is listed here, as well as in the checklist. You also need to make sure that you've included a data availability or a data access statement. Often publications ask this of you, and we think it would be very beneficial to include this as a standard for your data as you share it, so that it directs readers or the audience to the Workbench and lists both the tier of the data set that you worked with, the version number, as well as a link to the Workbench. And finally, if you are preparing a presentation right now or working on data that you think may end up in a peer-reviewed manuscript or that you intend to publish at some point, you need to make sure that you submit an electronic version of that manuscript to PubMed Central immediately after it's accepted. And there are some steps related to that if you reach the point of publication. You also need to make sure that you have reviewed the policy on stigmatizing research and that you've taken all necessary steps to ensure that the study will not be stigmatizing to any individuals, groups, or communities in accordance with our policy on stigmatizing research. And finally, you should make sure that you have taken all steps necessary in a manner that aligns with the ethical principles set forth in our policy on the ethical conduct of research. We understand that displaying participant counts of fewer than 20 can be a challenge. And so we have included some hypothetical data here that demonstrate the different ways in which you might encounter a violation and how to correct that violation. So in this table of hypothetical participants that have undergone what we consider procedure A, broken down by age groups, you can see that in the 85 and over category, there's a participant count of 12, which is less than 20, so that would be a violation. If someone tried to mask this information by saying that for this category there were less than 20 participants but still displayed a percentage value, or this was the only value that was masked, you can still work backwards and calculate the number of participants here, either by doing the calculation of what is 0.22% of the total number in this group, which is at the top of the table of 5,380. You can calculate that that would equal 12. Or you could add the remaining participant counts and subtract that from the total number of participants in the table and still get 12. The same can be said if you were to attempt to mask this group value by just not showing the data at all and not showing a percentage value or a numeric value. And you could still back calculate using the remaining percentages or participant counts here. So next, we're going to go through a few different ways you could make a table like this in compliance with our policy. You could first do this by collapsing the group that is less than 20 into a neighboring group as appropriate. So in this case, we collapse the 85 and older group into the 80 plus age group participant count, which now gives us participant counts that are well above 20 across the table. And now this table is in compliance with our policy. Additionally, you could coarsen and mask the data of two independent categories. So you want to make sure that you are showing two non-exact participant counts. In this case, we coarsened the data of the 60 to 69 year group as well as the 85 plus year participant category so that we have less than 20 represented for the 85 and over and greater than 3,792 for the other group. There are not exact values that you could then go and back calculate because more than one group is now masked. And similarly, if you were to attempt to just mask one group and the group that is less than 20, you still could back calculate. So you can mask two groups by just completely masking the participant counts for more than one group, as long as they are independent as well. And finally, the same could be said for a graph. If you are showing a graphical representation of participant counts here, you need to make sure that there is no way to back calculate that as well. And so the first method that we described was used in this graph to mask the participant count less than 20. And finally, we just want to remind you that in accordance with our policies, you are not allowed to screenshot, copy, or download any participant or row level data from the Workbench. So while you are working within that space, we ask that you review the data and do aggregate statistics or analyses within the Workbench. And then once you have summary statistics or the data that you might see on the right, which has participant counts for each drug treatment group or for each other demographic category, now that data can be downloaded for your use. And even if that data includes a participant count of less than 20, as long as that is not being shared with others, that is okay. You can download that summary statistic of a less than 20 participant count value. You just cannot share it in any way with those outside the Workbench.